All right, everybody, welcome into episode 88. It is here on the very last day of July, which means we are almost to football season as August starts tomorrow, and it's going to be a very short countdown from here until football season begins. I'm Nicholas Hillop, as always, from Chattanooga, Tennessee, of the United States. And if I didn't mention it before, you're listening to the only Brazilian and American sports podcast, two countries, two Americas, all sports. And joining me from Brazil in Americana in the state of Sao Paulo is Gustavo Tomazeli. Gus, how are you doing?
Good, good, good. Uh, I imagine you're feeling shocked, but it's cold in Brazil. I don't know if you can see, but I'm wearing my Rio Branco hoodie, so it's a little bit
By
cold,
cold, you
chilly.
mean like 60 degrees.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's 66 degrees.
Okay, come on. Okay, Gus, that's not cold. Uh, you
It's
know,
chilly. Chilly. It's
well,
chilly.
you should have been with me around Christmas last year when it was like 5 degrees.
Yeah.
And I was out in those elements working. Of course, I don't know what's worse, the 5 degrees or working in 100-degree weather, like the past couple of weeks have been.
Yeah, I remember the end of July is always the hottest. Oh my god, I've been to many many American summers and winters, and I know Christmas can be the peak of cold, but end of July can be the peak of heat.
Right. I mean, it's evident we certainly get either end of the extreme here in Tennessee. It's just a wild roller coaster of weather at all times of the year. But we probably have a good month left of really, really hot weather, and hopefully September will bring us some relief when football season ushers away. But just kick off the sports segment tonight here on episode 88 here on the 31st July 2023. We're going to continue talking a bit of Women's World Cup. And, it's kind of a weird situation here tonight with the Americans because the vast majority of the country is not going to be awake to see this game happen. And there's a chance when we wake up in the morning that the Americans could be eliminated if Portugal pulls off a shocker against the Americans. If the Americans draw or win, they will advance to the next round. A win basically would guarantee them the top of the group unless the Netherlands beat Vietnam by three more goals. I believe that would be what they would need. Um, and and honestly, to me, the Americans haven't looked very sharp. I mean, they only beat Vietnam by three. Um, they really had to gut it out against the Netherlands to get a draw, and it just feels like they're leaving a lot of chances on the field, and I don't know if they can afford to do that against Portugal.
Yeah, they're in a comfortable situation still. It was a very tight game between the Netherlands and the U.S. Like we did the show last week while the game was happening, and from the moments I could see was both teams had a chance to win it, and so the tie was fair. So I think the U.S. is going to be comfortably knowing they can tie to qualify. So all the responsibility, all the pressure is on Portugal. Of course, if Portugal eliminates U.S., it's going to be kind of like their best achievement in women's soccer ever. Eliminating the back-to-back champions. But still, I feel the U.S. can comfortably going to qualify. Brazil, on the other hand, is a way more uncomfortable situation because Brazil needs to win against Jamaica on Wednesday at 6 a.m. Brazil time, 7 a.m. At 6 a.m. American time, 7 a.m. Brazil time. And Brazil defensively is not playing well, especially on the cross, on the we call here the air ball. The two goals France scored were more on the Brazilian lack of defensive preparement. Of course, France, like especially Hayward, deserves praise for the goals she scored. But I think Brazil is on a little pickle. Of course, they're lucky because Bunny Shaw, former lady vol soccer player, got ejected um, on the game on the World Cup, but I think it's going to be appealed because she got a red card versus the game versus France. So I think she might be able to play against Brazil, which she can be a trouble. I mean, we watch her play for the Vols, and we know how decisive she can be.
Yeah, I mean Jamaica, of course, they come in with that point goal, that point advantage. I think if you're Jamaica, you got to try to play for a draw. I think you got to try to park the bus and make Brazil attack for 90 minutes. And I think sit back, be on the counter attack. There's no reason to be the aggressive team there. You put the clamps down and you find a way to get out of there with a draw.
Yeah, I think that should be the strategy. Putty shot can be effective on a counterattack, but they're gonna park the bus. And I think if Brazil gets eliminated in the group stage, it's gonna be the question like, where is where like how far women's soccer comes in Brazil, because you know we kind of in transition period between the Marta generation and new generation. So if they're and also if Brazil gets eliminated in the group stage, Pia Sunhage should really, I think she's done. She is her second World Cup as Brazilian head coach, and if Brazil is eliminated Wednesday, she's definitely gonna get fired.
Oh yeah, yeah. If you don't make it out of this group, I mean, it's a disastrous result, and you have to wonder too. You got to remember the U.S. has a new coach as well. If something that goes horribly wrong tonight and they lose to Portugal, I think that's it for this new coach as well. Like you can't have the defending back-to-back champions and not even make it out of the group stage the next time.
Yeah, Vladiko Andonovski. He's from Macedonia, and I mean he's under a lot of pressure because he's done well in the WNS in the NWSL, but it's another thing to coach. Of course, he came after the after the World Cup, so he, being the coach after back-to-back champions, it's hard.
Yeah, I mean, so far for 2 games, he's no Joe Ellis. Uh, I'll say that much. Just tactically, I'm not impressed so far with them. And right now, I wouldn't pick the Americans to win the World Cup. I think when you look at a team like Japan right now, I think what they did in the world in the Group C, 11 goals scored, no goals allowed. They destroyed Spain 4-0 in their last group game. I mean, they have the leading scorer in Hinata Miyazawa. I mean, they got it going over there, and because Japan is the last team that's not America that's won the World Cup, so they, in their own right, have been a little dynasty of their own. Because if they make it to the final, that would be 3 out of 4 for Japan, and I mean that's a well-oiled machine.
Yeah, 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 that's true. Yeah, I mean, I think the U.S. as well is going through a little bit of transition time because both Brazilian and American big stars are on the bench. Not being their best player. Marta and Marta, for
Rapino.
example, yeah, Marta and Rapino, both are on the bench. Both are there more for their experience, trying to be kind of like the experienced voice than to be active on on the team. So I think now, if let's say both are eliminated in the group stage, where what direction should the Brazilian Confederation and U.S. Soccer Federation, because it'll be a big disaster.
Right. And on the one hand, if you're gonna have a World Cup that you're going to be bad in, this is the one. The one that like no one on our continent can watch, right? Because of the time difference. Like as I said this morning, and that's I think honestly what makes me the most unsettled about this. It's gonna happen at 3 a.m. It feels like something weird could happen. Like I remember when Argentina beat or Saudi Arabia beat Argentina, it was like a 5 a.m. Eastern kick. Like it feels like the weird stuff happens when you're not watching. And I wouldn't be shocked if I woke up in the morning and saw um, that the Americans, lost.
Yeah. The Brazil time still like 7 p.m. here is not that bad. A lot of people are watching TV there, but yeah, that's true. The time, like, as much as you know, probably people from the eastern part of the world, especially Asia and Oceania, New Zealand, Australia, but China, Japan, that whole area. As much as they love sports, for the West, it's hard to kind of enjoy a sports tournament with that time zone difference.
Exactly. I mean, it just almost feels like it's not happening. Like it doesn't exist because of the time difference. I know it is, but like it's just I really hope they never host the men's World Cup there because I know they did in like Japan and South Korea. Because if this were the men's World Cup, I definitely would be waking up to watch this match. Um, but even though I do have my concerns about the women, I do have to trust their championship pedigree enough that they'll take care of things tonight and top this group. Um, so I'll go 2-1 for the U.S. tonight. And I think Brazil will find a way to break through against Jamaica. I think Jamaica will make it extremely difficult. But Brazil will find a way.
Yeah,
One
I
nil.
think US too. For me, it's gonna be Brazil 1-0 and US gonna be 1-1. I think US ties and qualifies.
And that would be fine with me. A handful of just broadly in the rest of the Women's World Cup. In terms of the host, Australia topped their group. They destroyed Canada today 4-0. Canada has a really good team, and they just didn't show up to play this morning at all. Really surprising, actually, as Nigeria gets in over Canada. So huge for Nigeria.
But for Canada it was a shocker because they got the gold medal in the World Cup they got the gold medal in the 2020 Olympics. So the for women's soccer, the Olympics is the second biggest tournament, and it's 2 years after that, and you're eliminating the group stage. It's kind of, especially losing to Australia 4-0.
Right. In Australia, they didn't have their best player throughout this entire group stage in Sam Kerr, which also I think
Yeah.
makes it that much worse if you're Canada. Um, the other host, New Zealand, they didn't make it through, which I mean, that
But it
just has
was
to be disappointing for them.
But the way it was painful because when they started the game, they were qualified with the tie. No, Norway had to win by like they had to win massive because of goal differential. They qualify on goal differential. Like New Zealand had to win Switzerland because of goal differential, and Switzerland parked the bus because if they lose, they would be kicked out because of goal differential.
Yeah, and giving up just to like the Philippines, they were outscored 8-1 in this World Cup. That one goal was over New
Was a win.
Zealand,
Yeah.
which is the only goal that New Zealand gave up in 3 matches. But New Zealand only scored one goal in 3 matches. I mean, that's just got to be the most painful because you didn't have an offense that you don't get to go to the knockouts in your own country. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So the on the round of 32, so there's gonna be Switzerland and Spain, Japan and Norway. Two games already defined. So if US would let's say win versus Portugal, it'd be first in the group E, they would have played the uh, first in the group E is the second in group J. Second in group J, Italy for now.
Oh yeah, so I see that. So America they play Italy right now, and then if they somehow ended up second, that'd be Sweden. Because they've had to face off against Sweden
Yeah,
in the past. Um, I was gonna tell you too, Colombia. Don't watch out for Colombia down there in Group H. Um, that's a tough team.
yeah, they have
So
a a young star that is killing it.
right, in
So
terms of in terms of just looking at some of the top stats, of course, I mentioned Hinata Miyazawa, top goal scorer, followed by several women at three, including like Alexandria Pop of Germany, Amanda Ilstad of Sweden, Araya Borges of Brazil. So some of the top ones there. Mina Tanaka
what?
with three assists for Japan. So, yeah, so those are some of the top stats there. But we'll have to see what happens tonight. Hopefully, it isn't a disaster for the Americans or the Brazilians in the group stage, and they can move on to the knockout stage this weekend. Moving back over to the Americas,
Uh,
because there's some huge.
bef-
Hello?
no, I was gonna say. I was like, I thought we were gonna finish the Brazilian topics before we move on.
Oh, no. I wanted to segue it with the MLS La Liga.
Oh, okay, sounds
Libertadores.
good. Sounds good
Right,
because that's huge.
right. Um, so a story that connects America and Brazil truly directly here. So it's come out that the MLS, Major League Soccer, and the Mexican League La Liga, or actually, wait, that's wrong. That's Liga X MX, Liga MX. I'm getting that confused with the Spanish league. So MLS and Liga MX are going to compete in Libertadores versus South American teams in 2024. Uh, Gus, as someone that is way more familiar with the landscape of Libertadores, what should American fans expect to get themselves into here?
One thing that has been weird is that for now there's no Brazilian news outlets like certifying that. I only found news from like 2 weeks ago saying there is a big possibility. There's discussions about it, but there's still no like certification like say hey this gonna happen or this is gonna happen. But if it does, I mean, what CONMEBOL and CONCACAF want to do is strengthen the soccer within their country, and for especially CONCACAF teams for do that you need to have the experience playing with CONMEBOL teams, especially Brazilian and Argentinian teams, which for me I think is a great move. Logistically, like I was talking with my friend Lucas Ardito, colleague of mine in the sports radio here. Logistically, it's gonna be a hellhole. Because think about it. Let's say Grêmio, a team in Porto Alegre, the south of Brazil, like they're always in Libertadores. Like, and let's say they're gonna have to play the Chicago Fire, which is in the north of the United States. So it's gonna be like let's say optimistic, like um, 17-hour flight, and Brazil have a tight schedule. Like for example, Grêmio is gonna play a Sunday afternoon game in Brazilian league, then have to go play on Wednesday against Chicago Fire. Have to travel an entire day to arrive there. So I wonder how the logistically is gonna be. Of course, uh, like Libertadores had Mexican teams before. Like for a while, they play like I think for like the late 90s until like mid 2010s. there were Mexican teams. Couple make it to the final. I remember Cruz Azul making 2001. Chivas in 2010 made it. There was a stupid rule that if a Mexican team won the Libertadores, they could not play in the FIFA Club World Cup. They would have to give it up that spot for the second team or even the third team. If, like, let's say there was a Mexican final, they would have to give that spot for the next team that is not Mexican team in the Libertadores. So, but I think it shouldn't be the Libertadores. I think it should be kind of like the League's Cup. Like, let's say, get the two best teams in Brazil, two best for Argentina, two best for MLS, two best for Mexico, and play, let's say, in January for like a preseason. I think that would be best instead of Libertadores and making like this logistic hellhole.
I understand logistically the issues, but I do think, for one, it gives Brazil and Argentinian teams a chance to really market themselves in the North American market. I think that is a huge opportunity. We've talked about how Americans are investing more into Brazilian soccer, and this would just give teams like a Botafogo, a Flamengo, a Palmeiras a chance to really expand their brand into a place like the United States. So I think there's one big advantage right there. Two, it raises competition level, right? Like, you take the best from South America, you take the best from North America, and yes, it still isn't quite European quality, but it's probably the best international competition that's outside of Europe
No, I
when you
definitely
combine that.
agree. I think no,
Go ahead.
especially I would prefer Libertadores playing like, let's say, the competition would be better playing with Mexican teams and American teams. Let's say comparing like playing right now we have to play teams from Venezuela, Bolivia, Peru. Those countries are no match anymore. No match. And this expansion, I think, Comebol wants to make Brazilian teams uncomfortable because Brazilians have been dominating the Libertadores. They won all titles since 2019. They won 2019, 2020, 2021, and 2022, and I think they're going to win this year as well.
I mean, they certainly have been on a roll. We were talking about this in our little group chat earlier, because I made the statement that I don't think MLS teams are going to do very well in this competition. I don't think that the talent in MLS, the teams in MLS, are on the level of Brazilian teams, of Argentinian teams. Um, and I cited, for example, FC Austin in our North American Cup getting curb stomped by Violet in Haiti, as an example of American teams really struggling in international competitions. And if we can't even beat a team from Haiti, one of our best MLS teams, how do we expect to compete with Brazilian teams or Argentine teams?
Yeah, that's a big question, and but you have to make that push, to make your league better. If it's like, you know, if when you have harder competition and at first you get exposed, but then you're like, hey, we have to make ourselves better if we want to compete with those teams. So maybe this will push MLS to be into a more competitive league and attract even the better players than they are attracting right now.
Absolutely. I hope it really would increase the level of MLS. If we can increase the level of MLS, inevitably that's going to increase the level of the U.S. men's team, and that's huge because right now I feel like whenever the U.S. men's team is mostly MLS players, it's not very good. We just saw what happened in the Gold Cup with a mostly Gold Cup roster or MLS roster.
Yeah, that's true. And your point about Brazilian teams market themselves into an American market, that would be great, and that's the way you have to do it. Like when you play those teams, Atlanta United, New York City FC, or Orlando, you get exposed and you get like if people notice you and be like, Brazilian teams are interesting. Maybe I'll follow the Brazilian league, and that will make even open more the market for Brazilian players in US because I bet you know Brazilian players are attracted to play in US. If you ask Brazilian players, 9 out of 10 will be yes, I want to play in the MLS because you know Brazilian culture idolizes United States. People. If you ask Brazilians, 10 out of 10, if somebody would say, "Hey, do you want to move to US right now?" They would say yes.
There's surely a lot less pressure in the United States. I mean, a lot less pressure. I mean, think about how Messi probably feels right now being in Miami. Like now, it's basically like being in a retirement home. It's like being in a rec league for him, probably.
Yeah, like they're like compare like in PSG, there were mad fans wanted to throw stuff at him, like kind of being um, hostile to him. In Inter Miami, he can go to the supermarket, nobody's gonna bother him. There'll be no protest on the Inter Miami headquarters. He can leave the team can lose 5-0. Nobody cares. Let's be honest though.
I mean, it's like with the Mox and balls, right? Like I can't tell you what the Mox quarterback looks like. I probably walk by him in Publix, and I wouldn't know anything. But I could recognize Joe Milton, if I saw him, and definitely have higher expectations for Joe Milton for his upcoming year, right? Than I have for whoever the Mox quarterback is, just because I have higher expectations for the balls.
And it's only about high expectations. It's about the culture that you're entrenched to. Like Miami, like of course there's a lot of people in Miami that are interested in football. It's a high populated Latino area, but the people there care more, I bet, about baseball than soccer. Like, look how the World Baseball Classic, it's always filled up when in Miami. It's because the Latino community embrace more baseball than soccer. But nevertheless, I think Messi is gonna have fans wanted to see him. They'll be season ticket holders, but the pressure is different. MLS, you know, the MLS fans in general, they have. It's not they don't have expectations. Is that their the passion that they have is more like a tourist fan than the passionate fan like the NFL or the college football. Then every week is praying for the fan. And shout out to my friend Mauricio Pitoli that has the radio show Thursday Rock on Club FAM.
All right, shout out to Mark Studio. But yeah, but so I have to see, but keep tabs on this, see when they officially announce it. But Gus, transitioning into Brazilian sports, how is the current Libertadores unfolding?
Yeah, the Libertadores is resuming after a 1 month stop, and they're in the round of 32. Of course, I think the biggest matchup is Atlético Mineiro and Palmeiras. Both teams are in crisis. I think Atlético Mineiro more because since the new head coach Luis Felipe Scolari Felipão arrived, they have not won a game. 4 ties and 4 losses. It's all hanging on the balance. But Palmeiras as well. Palmeiras was, they had like a losing streak. They were eliminated by São Paulo in the Brazilian Cup. They have at some point they had one win on the last 6 games, they but Palmeiras recovered themselves. They won their last 2 games convincingly. Of course, the teams they play were in the middle to the bottom tier in the Brazilian league. But I'm excited about this matchup. I mean, the question is if Palmeiras is eliminated in the in the Libertadores, heads are gonna get cut. Like people are gonna get fired because Palmeiras fans are fed up with Palmeiras president Leila Pereira, especially because of the meme, because she is not signing much players this season, this year. She only signed two players, Arthur from Bragantino, from Red Bull Bragantino, and Richard Hughes from Guarani. And for a team that expects to be on top, that's not much when you lose Gustavo Scarpa, Danilo to Nottingham Forest, you lose other key players. And the meme is because when she got an interview asking about those signing players, she said, "Oh, the best sign I got is the airplane that I bought for myself, and Palmeiras can use it anytime." So there's a lot of memes about it. There's like, "Oh, here's comes substitution," like, and then the plane, and there's like the second best signee is the pilot. Like they're making fun of it.
Well, it sounds like she's not investing where she needs to be at all.
Yeah,
I mean, it really sounds like a Ted Lasso plot. Is what exactly it sounds like. I mean, I just started watching it over the weekend, so that's kind of on my mind soccer wise. I mean, it seems like a wacky scenario that'd be on that show.
yeah. I mean, the football, the director of operation, the general manager of Brazil, of Palmeiras, Alexandre Baus. He's done a great job. You know, he was the GM. They got Palmeiras two Libertadores, a Brazilian national championship, Brazilian Cup, two Paulista titles. But if Palmeiras eliminated from the Libertadores, I think fans are wanna see him fired. Of course, fans kind of are saving Abel Ferreira, like saving in the sense like they don't want like Palmeiras fans idolize Abel Ferreira. Like they will probably like in 2021, fans probably were mad at him, but he won Libertadores then, Brazilian Championship. So I don't think Palmeiras fans wanted to see Abel Ferreira fired, but definitely the GM. If Palmeiras loses the Libertadores, he's gonna get fired.
The pressure, I mean, it just never ceases to amaze me. The pressure these coaches and GMs are in. Also, shout out to our friend Jason Warwick from Indianapolis saying hello. Thanks for watching. Two countries, two Americas,
Oh,
all sports.
hey Jason, if you want to hop in later to talk about uh the situation with the wide receiver from Colts,
Running back, Jonathan Taylor.
yeah, Jonathan Taylor, yeah, running back. Sorry.
Yeah, which I felt that it'll be the second straight show that we discuss running back issues. It seems like that'll be the topic of conversation heading on. But let's get through the Brazilian stuff here.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So just to finish Libertadores, so there's gonna be this matchup. Fluminense plays at Argentino Juniors. I don't think Paul Fluminense is gonna have much trouble. Internacional plays River Plate. That's gonna be a tough challenge. And but Flamengo is gonna play Olympia, and it seemed like of course not easy, but not big game. But then things went south on Saturday because Flamengo won against Atletico Mineiro, but things got ugly in the locker room because Flamengo striker Pedro refused to warm up when the athletic trainer uh, called him, uh, ask him to warm up. So then Pablo Fernandez, the athletic trainer, got mad at him, and according to sources, got in a heated argument and punched him in the face and in the mouth in the locker room.
geez, it sounds a lot like the Antonio Brown situation a couple of years ago. That didn't
Yeah.
escalate to fights.
So then Pedro went to a police station and got a police report because he had two players that were with him when this incident happened. So on Sunday, there were speculations that the coach, Jorge Sampaoli, was going to get fired because he, like, there were like sources say, like reporters say that if the Flamengo front office asked him to fire the athletic trainer, he would have leave. But that's not happened today. Sampaoli stayed. Pablo Fernandez was fired, the guy who punched Pedro. But Pedro itself did not show to practice today. And there were rumors that Pedro was going to leave, even to Palmeiras. But uh, according to Globosport.com, 2 hours ago, there was a meeting that kind of repaired these issues, and Pedro's going to go back to practice tomorrow. The striker was with the Flamengo's vice president of operations, Marcos Braz. So
Well, it's good to
I
know
think,
that one meeting could solve everything.
yeah, Pedro has been kind of like not to say basket case, but there were incidents with him in 2020. In 2021, he was called up to play for the Olympics for Brazil, but Flamengo refused to give him to the Brazilian team because he was not under 23. So he got mad at it. And then he's not being the starter like in the past few years. Only last season he was the starter because one of the key players, Bruno Henrique, got injured. And since Jorge Sampaoli arrived a couple of months ago, he has been in the reserves. So that's why probably he got mad. I understand firing the athletic trainer because like no person should be facing violence in their workplace, not even in sports where things got heated and you know, of course you face extreme situations, but violence is not the answer. But definitely you wanna to like you don't wanna also give the power too much power to too much power to the player. That's my thing. But I I understand that he did not want to uh, practice today to kind of solve the situation, and I think he wanted to seem valued.
Well, I mean, sometimes as a player, you really have to, really establish yourself in terms of value. I think we're seeing a lot of this with running backs in the NFL right now, just to kind of tease that moving forward. But in soccer, I feel like it's a lot less about the player and much more about the team and the team chemistry. If you was a basketball player, you could go a lot further with the antics and not have any repercussions. But here, he needs to really be careful because you can find someone to replace him and not lose much of anything.
Yeah, I think Pedro is not that he's replaceable, but I he's not a top tier like player like Gabigol. Gabigol is like one of the like Flamengo's top stars, like all time players. So and Flamengo, of course, the training, like to get him, it would have cost a buckload of money. So that's why no team in Brazil wants him. But nevertheless, it was a sad situation, and I wonder how Flamengo's going to react on Thursday when they have to play Olympia in Libertadores. Then we're going to see the real effect on this.
Right. Well, it sounds like if they repair their relationship, maybe they can come out and get a good result.
Yeah. But comparing one real team to the other, if in Flamengo things are in turmoil, Botafogo is in the skies. Botafogo won 4-1 versus Curitiba. They won what we call here the first turn. Like, Brazilian league is like the Premier League. You play 19 games, then you play another 19 games, like home and away. And the first 19 games we call the first turn. Like the and then so Botafogo won the first turn of the Brazilian Championship. They got the record for this, like for the first 17 games. No other team won this many games in the first 17 games of a Brazilian league. They won 14 out of 17. I mean, they're 12 points ahead. And but if you ask Botafogo fans, they're like, "Oh, we didn't want anything. were still fighting, because Botafogo fans are known to be skeptical and like that. Do you know that kind of fan base that always feels that something's gonna go wrong, like the Vol fans a couple of years ago?
Yeah, and I still think there's an element of that. I mean, when, it's not like last year went off without a hitch, right? I mean, we had the disaster in South Carolina. It's called battered Vol syndrome, is what it's called. Uh, and it sounds like they got battered Bogafogo
Yeah,
Fogus syndrome.
like Botafogo has not won the Brazilian league in almost 3 decades, 28 years. Botafogo is the team in the Big 12. The four teams from Rio, four teams from São Paulo, two teams from Minas Gerais, and two teams from Rio Grande do Sul. they they are the longest streak. I think no, the longest is Internacional. So they are the second longest streak without the Brazilian title. But during this time, Internacional won Libertadores 2 times. Won the FIFA Club World Champions. So I think Botafogo feels this streak more because Botafogo has not come close winning a big title. They only won the state championship. They have not won Copa Sul-Americana, Libertadores, nothing.
Yeah, I think they gotta make it to if we're at 19 games. If they can keep a double-digit lead through, let's say, game 27, 28, and get into those final 10 with a double-digit lead, I think they'll be in a very, very good spot. But if Flamingo, if Palmeiras are
Palmeiras.
going to make a run, and they're going to have to make a run in the next 5 to 6 games.
I think it all depends in the, like, especially with Palmeiras. If Palmeiras is eliminated from Libertadores, I think they're gonna go all in the Brazilian Championship, and then the fight's gonna get big with Botafogo. But if Palmeiras and Flamengo keeps in Libertadores, Flamengo is very much alive in the Brazilian Cup, then I think Botafogo is not saying it's gonna have an easier path, but I don't. But they're not gonna compete with the full Palmeiras or full Flamengo.
Hey, I'm kind of crazy. I'm just looking at some of the scores and stuff. It says they're only through 17 matches
Yeah,
played.
yeah. Next week's gonna be week 18, but
Okay.
but Botafogo won the first round, kind of like like we have 38 games, and the on week 19 is like the half point. Like they won the
Okay.
the, the
Oh,
first half
okay.
of they won the
I
title
see.
of first half of the season.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. They still have a very long way to go. If they're in the same position in like 11 matches, then I think they're in a really good spot. But that's such a long way. So I can't even blame Botafogo fans for being skeptical. I mean, that's a long way to go. Um,
Yeah,
I also just looking at the table too. Corinthians and Santos, they have not really improved their standing. It looks like
yeah.
much.
Santos is an utter disaster. They lost again. Like, Santos has been, how Santos has been. Like, since we started the pod, like, you always hear Santos fighting for relegation in the Brazilian league or in the Paulista league. They're always fighting for relegation. The front office of Santos the past few years has been, I won't say disastrous, but has been kind of like failure to produce good teams to be competitive. Like Santos has not been competitive in a long time.
Yeah, and that's just an absolute shame being a historic team, a historic power, and then
Yeah.
Corinthians and even Atletico Mineiro. Like I feel like I hear their name being more competitive than they are right now in 13th. Of course,
Yeah.
obviously, we don't need to rehash Vasco da Gama. I mean, they can't do anything.
Like Vasco da Gama, like I feel sorry for the fans because Vasco got promoted last season despite all the chaos and all the emotional meltdown they had by the end of the season in second division, but they got promoted. But then Vasco fans were optimistic because there was going to be this hedge fund, this company that was going to get Vasco, and they promised big investments and teams filled with stars, but none of this happened. They signed goodish players, like B plus players, um, okay, B minus coaches, and they're where they were a couple of years ago in the first division in fighting for relegation. So even though this new company 777 partners arrive, Vasco fans feels they're in the same position they were a couple of years ago.
Yeah, yeah, it really is a shame. So it's clear
Yeah.
to me they're heading for relegation.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it's sad because Vasco is being on the roller coaster. Go up and down, first, second division, and the struggle is going to be really big this season. Just to finish up Brazilian topics, our beloved Rio Branco played on Saturday to begin the third round of the Paulista Under 23. Um, Kind of like a disappointing tie at home, especially when you're on the lead twice and you conceded 2 goals on a corner kick, and they're gonna have to win from on Wednesday tomorrow against Jabaquara. We're gonna have to play again, Nick, for the third time this season. We're gonna play Jabaquara.
And it always seems like they either draw or beat you guys in the stupidest ways possible, too.
Yes, yes,
Um,
yes.
yeah, but
They're what
Rio
we call
Bronco, like I thought at least in like parts I was able to watch, they looked really good. At least offensively, but you're right, definitely defensively, they had some real lapses that led to those conceding goals.
yeah, and especially uh like today I went to the practice and our defensive starter is in the injury list and we don't know if he's going to be available on Wednesday. So we when the season started we had four defensive players. One was injured throughout most of the tournament, and now he's gone. He is playing overseas, so we have three. And if this guy, our best defender that we had, is injury, I don't know. I'll be kind of scared for our defensive side.
Yeah, I mean it's been a great run of things for Rio Bronco. At least I think it's been a lot of fun to watch, and maybe they can pull off a win tomorrow and give themselves a chance.
Yeah, let's hope we finally beat Jabakora because I not that I hate them, but they're so annoying. They make me annoyed. But we'll see what's gonna happen on Wednesday. But that's it for Brazilian soccer, for Brazilian sports.
Absolutely. So we're gonna jump back over to the states. I've sort of a bit of college football here. Of course, we kind of talked about this last week, but it's now official. Colorado is going to the Big 12. Of course, they were in the Big 12 before 2011. They are going back to the Big 12. Is this a sign that the Pac 12 is dead? Because they're about to lose USC and UCLA this year, and now they're about to lose Colorado as well. They're down now to 9 teams in the Pac-12. Um, they just had media days. They have no new TV deal because their TV deal ends after this year, and they have nothing announced. Most conferences, most sports leagues have something announced. Um, the Pac-12 has nothing, and it seems like for everyone that's left, it is absolute panic time. We got to get out of here. It's like a nuclear reactor is melting down, and that is the Pac-12.
I don't want to be uh I don't want to be George Kliakov right now. I definitely do not want to be him.
No, and you just gotta do something if you're him. He's doing nothing. You're doing nothing to save your conference. And it really does feel like in 5 years, the Pac 12 is going to go the way of the Big East in football. I really think we are seeing the end. Because if you're in the Mountain West, like Boise State, why would you leave for the Pac-12? Why would you? It's a disintegrating conference. If anything, the Oregon states and the Washington states are going to have to join the Mountain West.
Yeah, and how about Oregon and Utah that being somewhat relevant in the last decade? Where are they gonna go?
Well, I think Utah should go to the Big 12. I think, as I've said, I would really love to see Oregon, Washington, Stanford, and Cal go to the Big Ten. I think those four would be a really good fit for that conference. And I think Washington State, Arizona State, Oregon State, and the Arizona schools are doomed to go to the Mountain West because those four teams are just not relevant. And I know the Arizona teams are controversial, but I mean they don't have the large fan base. It's like I saw someone the other day, an Arizona State fan, try to say that their school is more relevant than like 95% of all football teams. But no, have we even ever talked about Arizona State on this show? In 88 episodes, have we ever talked about Arizona State?
None, no time.
No, like who cares about the Sun Devils? Nobody. That like when you even look at fan maps, Big Ten teams because of all the Sunbirds that moved to Phoenix, they have more fans in the Phoenix area than Arizona State does. Um, I mean, it's truly a shame, but nobody cares about the Arizona State, and I think it's going to get reflected. Utah to me has a pretty rabid fan base. With a track record of athletic success, it's going to get them into a big conference. And Arizona, they have a really good basketball program. So could that land them somewhere? I think for Arizona, if I would move my basketball team to the West Coast Conference, where Gonzaga's at, and then try to find my football program in like the Mountain West or something. Because for Arizona basketball, that would be huge. And Gonzaga, I think, would absolutely love that as well. Kind of beef up their conference schedule.
Yeah, I think those, but and it's interesting that Pac-12 media days this weekend because according to 24/7 Sports, tomorrow they're going to present a media deal. Pac-12. I wonder what network is crazy enough to sign a media deal with a dying conference.
Yeah, Pac-12's Kovalov percent TV deal with eyes to Arizona. I'm very interested to see what they have because from what I heard, they didn't have anything to announce. But I guess now they are in panic mode. But like from what I've heard, the rumor is they might go to like Apple TV or something.
I mean, for Apple TV, I think is, but I don't know. Like, is it worth it to make a shot? I, I because it's like I compare to like when Rede TV got the Brazilian TV deal from the 13 clubs, a group that used to like kind of sold those TV deals, and the club was dissolved, and then the each club dealt their TV deals individually. So how tough is for, let's say, Apple TV to sign with the Pac-12, kind of knowing that a lot of those schools can leave at any point.
I mean, it certainly is a lot of risk, and that's why you get these schools to sign grant of rights agreements to make it really hard for them to leave. Just look at what's going on with Florida State and Clemson. There's a lot of movement at those programs that they want to leave the ACC for the SEC, but they cannot because of the ACC grant of rights. If they were to leave the ACC right now, every single year, every single dime those two teams made in the SEC would go back to the ACC for 13 years. And if you're the Pac 12, you got to try to get these other schools roped in on a deal like that. But if I'm any one of those schools, I'm not signing a contract that's 20 years long. There's no way. Because like Florida State and Clemson have really screwed themselves because of that 20-year grants of right agreement.
Yeah, Yeah, when ACC got that grant of rights, it was in another situation. Now the Pac-12 has no leverage for to do that.
Right, right. I mean, they really have none. And really, Deion Sanders was going to be one of their biggest draws moving forward. I mean, they've lost USC and UCLA, which were two of their bigger teams. Now you've lost Deion and Colorado. So you've got Oregon and Washington and Utah, which are very good programs, but they're not enough to carry an entire conference. So I really just don't know. And if I'm these other schools, I'm not agreeing to anything that is binding. I'll say that much. Like, you got to give me a wiggle room in the contract clause. You got to take advantage of the fact that the Pac-12 is weak, because the Pac-12 should be doing everything and anything to try to keep these schools around, which I don't think is ultimately going to be in their best interest. It's going to be a Hail Mary that's going to fall short.
Yeah, and the time that the ACC forced the schools to sign the grant of rights was interesting because that was the 2012-2013 season where there was a lot of was probably the last time there were turmoil within conferences of collegiate athletics. There was the rating of the Big East, the Big Ten getting schools like Rutgers and Maryland, so the ACC prevent themselves with that grant of rights. Something probably the Pac-12 should have thought back in 2010, where they're on the peak of it. Probably the peak of the Pac-12 was the 2000s decade. Up until like 2010, 2011. If they got that deal, then they would have been safe until 2031, but they didn't.
Right, right. Um, I just because there's a rumor going around on Twitter that Florida State's going to lead the ACC, but like it will just be it would be them just throwing away money. Like you can't do that if you're a Florida State. So um, the Pac-12 definitely is in a very tough spot, and I'll be interested to see what Colorado does in the Big 12 next season, because I think it's going to be really, really good. But joining us from the Hoosier State is Jason Wyrick. Jason, how are you doing behind the wheel?
Man, how you doing, boys? First of all, I want to make sure you guys can hear me okay. Because if you
Yeah,
guys are having,
yeah, we
you
can
can
hear
hear me.
you.
Cool.
Right.
All
Yeah, we
right.
can hear you.
I wanted to make sure I didn't have any connection issues because if I did, I'd just get back on when I get home. But I appreciate you guys. Always wanting to have me on and always inviting me on, and it's a pleasure to come on the podcast.
Absolutely. And while we have you on, we will shift gears. We'll come back to college football a little bit later, but we have to get into some big news in the NFL with Jonathan Taylor and the Indianapolis Colts, because news came out over the weekend that Taylor and his agent requested a trade after his request for, I believe it was 16 million per year came out, and Jim Irsay and the Colts weren't having any of that with this current running back market. And Jason, I'll kind of let you have the floor because this is your team. This is um, a running back that you have said in the past you think it's the best running back in the league. So at least at times, like back, like especially like 2021 in that era. Um, so what was your reaction to that news, and where do you think the Colts stand?
Well, I do think he's the best running back in the NFL as far as pure talent is concerned. And I think that he deserves all the money that he gets, no matter where he gets it from. I want to preface this by saying, I hope he gets his bag. The problem is, I don't want the Colts to be the one giving him the bag. I hate that it has come to this because I truly believe, first and foremost, I believe this comes down to his agent. I think his agent has fed him completely unrealistic numbers that were never going to be attainable. in a realistic market. And I think the problems began there because he talked about he's got a fourth year of his contract, and he needs to play that out and things will all fall into place. And then 2 weeks later, he fired his agent and then hired this loudmouth guy. And truthfully, I think he probably hired this guy because this guy was telling him, oh, well, you're worth this money or that money. That's completely unrealistic. Now, Nick, you are the resident Tennessee Titans fan of this podcast, and Derrick Henry has widely been considered to be, if not the best, one of the top 2 or 3 best running backs in the league for the last 6 or so years. He's only on like $6 or $7 million of contract, right, per season?
Correct. He's actually on his final contract this season. So this season he will make $10.5 million on his base salary. This is at the end of the 4-year, $50 million contract. But he was going between $3 million in his first year up to 10 in this last year.
And see, those numbers are the market for running backs because he is widely considered to be, if not the top, one of the top running backs in all of football. That is the benchmark. I don't want to hear about Ezekiel Elliott or Le'Veon Bell or whoever else. The benchmark is Derrick Henry.
Right. And the Titans are one of the few teams that actually build their offense around their running back because most NFL teams don't anymore.
Exactly. And so he is the most valuable running back to his franchise in the league, and it's not close. And so when you take that into account and you start to realize Jonathan Taylor is asking for $16 million a season, that's a completely unrealistic number. And I don't know where his agent pulled that from, but the number that they're demanding is not going to be a number that he gets from the Indianapolis Colts or 31 other NFL franchises. And that's really what it comes down to. I don't hold any ire towards Jonathan Taylor. I hope he gets his bag. The problem is he's being led astray by this completely unattainable and unrealistic goal that his agent has set, and then his agent is going and burning bridges in the process. Jim Irsay is known to be one of the most player-friendly owners in the league. He takes care of his people. One name that comes to mind is Edgerrin James. Edgerrin James left the Indianapolis Colts and deserved, and I want to come back to the Tony Dungy quote. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and just send it to you, Nick, so that you can read it, because obviously
I think we have it.
Yeah,
we have it here. I can put it on our screen.
Perfect. Yeah, the Tony Dungy quote is exactly where I wanted to go with this, because Edgerrin James left the Indianapolis Colts after the 2005 season, and this was the year before the Colts won the Super Bowl, and he deserved all the money that he got from the Arizona Cardinals. He did. But the Colts went and won the Super Bowl with a rookie named Joseph Adai out of LSU. And we were able to pay contracts to more important positions because of the money that we saved. It's not because Edgerrin James wasn't, worth that money, but financially, it doesn't make sense to build based on the salary cap. It doesn't make sense to pay a running back when you can just draft a rookie, because the league, offensively speaking, is built around quarterbacks, wide receivers, and O-line. The running back is the least important position on the offense, in my opinion. Now, I don't know how you guys feel about that, but as far as expendability goes, they have the shortest shelf life, because you can just go after another, good player and throw him behind a decent O-line. As long as you have a decent passing game and the defense can't stack the box against you, you can have an effective running game with a rookie from the mid-rounds. You've shown it time and time again in this league. You don't have to have an Ezekiel Elliott to be good. Jonathan Taylor is a second-round pick himself. Derrick Henry, a second-round pick. And then you have guys. Like Gus Edwards in Baltimore. He was decent, and he was undrafted. It's all about maximizing the amount of money because you only have so much to work with. And now I want to go back to where I said Jim Irsay is one of the most player-friendly owners in the league. Not only when Edgerrin James signed away from the Colts, did he give Edgerrin James a Super Bowl ring anyway? When Andrew Luck retired, he stepped away from football, and Jim Irsay paid out his whole contract because Jim Irsay takes care of those who do right by the Colts. And that's always been the way that it has been. And so if one of you guys wants to read the Tony Dungy quote,
Yeah.
it's Tony Dungy hits on it perfectly. And I don't think anybody can disagree with what Tony Dungy said in his series of tweets this afternoon.
Absolutely. All right, so Gus has got it up now, so I'll read it. I'm not disagreeing with Mike. I wouldn't call it chew/spit, just standard money management procedure. 7 years before that, the Colts replaced three-time Pro Bowl running back Marshall Faulk with less expensive rookie Edgerrin James. Happens at all positions except quarterback. And there's a second tweet below that, I believe. We'll scroll down. Edgerrin was worth every penny he was paid by the Cardinals that year. We went with Joseph Addai and Dominic Rhodes and got over 1,700 yards rushing from them. We saved a ton of money and used savings to sign Dwight Freeney, Reggie Wayne, and Dallas Clark to long-term deals. Economic reality. And you also got to think too, in 2006, what also happened for the Colts? They got their ring, right? Because they were able to sign those other players. And but I think it even goes beyond running back, because I think about the Chiefs last year. They let Tyreek Hill walk, who arguably is one of the best receivers in the league. And they still came back and won just because of how good Patrick Mahomes is.
It's a quarterback-driven league. It's a quarterback-driven offense. You can win without a running back. You can even win without an elite wide receiver if you have the right quarterback.
Absolutely. And it's like in Tennessee, right? Like we talk about, our receiving core is awful, and our receiving core has been awful. Let's not get it twisted. It is bad. But if you had an elite quarterback, which obviously the Titans don't right now, it would be a little less obvious that the Titans have a terrible receiving core.
Right. And it all comes down to how you can most effectively spend your cap space. Because as long as there is a salary cap, especially one that involves quarterbacks, you're going to have problems paying somebody. And you see it on defense all the time. For instance, the San Francisco 49ers paid Eric Armstead and traded away DeForest Buckner to the Colts. You hear the term cap casualty all the time, but the reason you hear that is because it's a quarterback-driven league. You cannot easily replace a quarterback. You can easily replace just about anybody else. And like Tony Dungy said, it happens at all positions. You see guys who are, elite level all the time that now, A.J. Brown is a bad example because he was worth the money that he got paid, and the Titans should have paid it. But you see it all the time.
Yeah.
And just to kind of amplify your example, that's why the teams that have the best overall roster in offense is when you have a quarterback who's on a rookie deal, because then is where you can find cap space to get to sign that big wide receiver or that big running back.
Right, and that's why you see so many teams that have these high-level quarterbacks on rookie deals go to the Super Bowl. That's why you saw Patrick Mahomes go to the Super Bowl on a rookie deal. That's why you saw Joe Burrow go to the Super Bowl on a rookie deal. Jalen Hurts, just this year, went to the Super Bowl on a rookie deal. And it's, kind of circling back to the original point, guys, it's not that Jonathan Taylor is not worth that money, because nobody would tell you that he is not worth it. But everybody would tell you that they hope that their team isn't the one that pays them if they are astute with the finances of football. And I've heard a multitude of different ways that this issue could be addressed. But my personal favorite is having a salary cap that does not include quarterbacks in it. Now, I think if you have a salary cap that doesn't have quarterbacks in it, and then quarterbacks have their own separate pay scale, Maybe you give them a max contract like what happens in the NBA. If you can do that, I think you solve a lot of these problems because the Colts would love to hang on to Jonathan Taylor. The Colts would love to have him. You don't want to have Jake Funk. You don't want to have, um, you know, Hull, Evan
Jason,
Hull in there.
and to amplify your point, I think though, and we talked about the running back pickle that is now not only Jonathan Taylor but with other running backs, and we talk about the Le'Veon Bell example. But I think teams don't want to sign big contracts with running backs because also you can't trade them. I think teams don't want to also trade for running backs because they can get on the draft.
You have to
Exactly.
wonder too, will the NFLPA step in at some point, right? Because because you had Le'Veon Bell, for example, go on that big tweet storm. We talked about this last week with Gus and I about how he was using the Bugs Life as his example of how running backs are getting screwed, and they're holding all these meetings as a position group, talking about, okay, how do we reestablish our value? And I think Jason's right in that it's going to take a drastic change in the business model. But will the owners go for that change in the business model?
I mean, eventually they're going to have to when the collective bargaining agreement begins to run out. The problem is they are locked into this CBA for the foreseeable future. The running backs can complain all they want, but this is something that was collectively bargained for, and it's their bed that they're going to have to live with now. And I can understand why, but another thing that makes them so expendable, guys, is they don't have a long shelf life. You see this drastic drop off on on running back production after, I don't know what the number is, but you see
I think it's
fall off
29, I believe, after 29 they fall off.
right.
It's
And
historically.
Consistency.
All right, Jason, I think we have lost you.
To Frank Gores, who managed to do well despite their age, then you will start to see the shift in the rhetoric, the shift in the value. The problem is teams don't want to commit that type of money, first of all, to a position that's easily replaced, but to a position where the value historically has not been there. And I think Derrick Henry is a perfect example, turning it back to him. He has been one of the top running backs in the league, but he has shown even he is human. He's not been healthy. He has lost production as he's gotten older. And people have said, okay, is this the beginning of the end for Derrick Henry? Is this the beginning of the end of his health? Because he's had one or two injuries every single season for the last 2 or 3 years. And the thing with Jonathan Taylor is he was injured last year and missed a few games. Jim Irsay doesn't want to pay that money to a guy who's coming off of an injury, and he doesn't know what the offense looks like with this rookie quarterback. Now, if he comes out and is healthy for all 17 games this season, and this offense just looks electric with him in it, with Anthony Richardson at the quarterback position, he will get an extension offer. But he is not going to sniff the $16 million that his agent is looking for. That's just not based in reality, period. That's not a number that's realistic at all. And the quicker he understands that this agent is feeding him these ridiculous numbers from, I don't know where he pulled them from, but, no running back has gotten that type of money. Sorry. That's just not the way it is. And so the quicker he understands that this is not the market reality, and once he understands, okay, my value is currently being disseminated based on I was hurt last year, and we don't know how I'm going to be with this new quarterback, and he realizes he has to prove himself on that last year of the deal, we know what he can do. He doesn't have to prove that he's a good running back, but he does have to prove he can stay healthy, and he has to prove that he fits in with the offense. And the quicker that gets realized, and the quicker he realizes that his agent is feeding him nonsense, the quicker that this is going to get resolved. And I don't know that the answer is I don't know that the answer is going to be with the Colts, but I do think the Colts are not going to trade him. The Colts are going to put him out there anyway, because the plan has always been to give him an extension offer. Now, if he takes it or not, I don't know. But I think the Colts want to keep Jonathan Taylor because he is the best running back in the league. In my view, when he's healthy, I think he is.
Well, another thing I have been thinking of in terms of this whole discussion the past few weeks is what does it mean for the future of running backs, period? Like, if you're a middle school or a high school and you're choosing a position to play, and you're seeing this situation with the running backs right now, do you hesitate to choose that position? Like, if you have the skills to be both a running back or a receiver, are you asking your coach, hey, I want to be a receiver, not a running back? And do we have less running backs to be created because of that? Because, I feel like, 40, 50 years ago, running back was the position to be at.
Right. And currently in football, I don't think you can get much better in terms of stability than at wide receiver. I think they have the best longevity in the league. And I think more than anything, Nick, I think what it's going to come down to is a lot more of these guys who are running back talents are going to try to become these hybrid players like a Travis Etienne, where, you can play out in the slot, you can run behind the line of scrimmage. Christian McCaffrey is another example of somebody that can do that. Although, again, Travis Etienne is the prime example right now. I think more guys are going to try to become this hybrid model and try to prove their worth doing more things, because running back is probably the toughest skill position to play just because of how much you get beat up on. And I think that contributes a great deal to the lack of longevity that the position has. But if you can show your value in other ways, like being a receiver that can go out into the slot or what have you, I think you can start to see those guys still get their money because they, first of all, are not taking as many hits, but they're proving their value in other ways that can't just be replaced in any third round.
And a question I have for you guys: you guys talk a lot about the running back position in the NFL, but is this also going to affect college football? Because if position skill player guys in the office, start to think about, should I be a running back that in the future are going to be probably the least player to get paid big bucks, or even if they're going to get paid big bucks, do you think there's going to be a lack of running backs in college football?
Well, I've even noticed this with the Vols. Like, I was watching the spring game, and I saw I forget which running back it was. I think it was Dylan Sampson. I watched him in 2 consecutive plays. First play, line up in the slot, go upfield, get a curl route 8 yards deep, catches it down. Then he runs back up, gets right next to the quarterback. And I think it was Nico he was with, Emi Alava, and gets a running back, or gets a run and goes up the gut for a first down. So like Josh Heupel in his offense, he's using running backs like that already, like what Jason was saying with the combo backfield being out in the slot. And I think the running backs are really going to look for more opportunities like that to expand their game, to expand their highlights, to show that they're not one-dimensional. And so, yeah, I think it's already had an impact. It's already, coaches are already implementing those type of players in different formats. Tyreek Hill, he has played running back. So he played some running back, a lot of running back in college. He's even been in some special running back packages, especially earlier in his career with Kansas City. I was watching some highlights earlier of Tyreek Hill, and there's one where he took a run from a running back, went up like 70 yards. So you can absolutely, absolutely dual use him. I think, like the third round pick the Titans got this year, Tajay Sharp from Tulane, that's how they kind of want to use him. Not just as an RB2 for Derrick Henry, but obviously to try to help boost the receiving core for the Titans.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Not only has the position begun to evolve already, but I think as far as running backs are concerned, I think the best athletes are gonna start to become other positions. They're gonna start to shy away from that. Not because they themselves are trying to do that, because you're going to have to play what your coach tells you to play, or you're not going to get to play. Until you're a professional athlete, that's just the way that it goes. However, I think coaches are already starting to do that. The example of Josh Heupel is the perfect one. But I also think that a lot of these players are going to start to be used in other positions because, like Nick was saying, you can do these other things and then still play running back. I think what it really comes down to is the evolution of the running back position is going to end up seeing the most athletic players who may have been a running back in the past end up becoming a wide receiver or maybe a corner, a defensive back of some sort. These guys are going to start to not be running backs anymore because the evolution of football says that the running back is the easiest position to replace. Because if you have a good quarterback and a good line, you can open up the passing game and then get your guy a few touches, a few yards to get where he needs to go. And I think you're, like Nick said, you're starting to see that already. But I also think that the athleticism of the running back position overall is going to drop a little bit, and you're going to start to see the best athletes become other positions. Because I think there are some of these guys in the NFL, Derrick Henry being a good example, Jonathan Taylor being a good example, these guys who were just physical beasts. These guys are going to start to be other positions. And I think you're going to see that over the next 10, 20 years as the evolution of football kind of catches up and you start to see these guys come up playing other positions now. These kids may be in middle or high school right now, but the evolution of the game starts at the NFL level and kind of trickles down. I think you're going to start to see these guys play more tight end or play more wide receiver or what have you. Because Derrick Henry is a tight end. In 10 or 15 years, a player of that physical makeup seems like a guy that would probably play tight end because that's a better position for that type of athlete. And I think the more and more that you see these, and I don't want to take anything away from anybody in the NFL because everybody in the NFL is a world-class athlete. But relatively speaking, athletes who are not the best athletes on the football field, the more you see those guys succeed at running back, the more you're going to see the better athletes go and succeed elsewhere.
Right. And for example, like one of the biggest recruits from the Chattanooga area this year is Boo Carter. He's going to go to Tennessee. He's committed there, and he's played running back mostly, but he's known for being able to catch the football, being out in space, and he's going to be used kind of like what you said. And it's we have truly entered a new era of football, and I think for running backs, they're going to have to suck it up and deal with it on all levels. The NFL running backs here, they don't have that much time, and I think that's why you see the urgency from these running backs right now, why they're beating together, why they are trying to demand bigger and bigger contracts, because they know their shelf life isn't there, and Exactly. They don't have the time to adjust like the college athletes, like the high school athletes below them. So it's going to be just really, really curious to see what they do. But also, as you said, those coaches are going to tell them to play what they want to play. And there's a lot of high school teams out there that can barely complete a forward pass and rely desperately on a huge tandem of running backs.
Yeah. I mean, those are good points, and I tend to agree. But those who have the athleticism to play will play at the college level, no matter what they play in high school. You see quarterbacks in high school going and playing at wide receiver, running back, whatever, at the college level, because high schools do what they have to do to get by. College coaches recognize that talent, and they recognize the physical makeup and the skill and the traits that these guys have regardless. And so I tend to think that mostly this is going to affect college and professional, because college is just an extension of professional football anyway. It's just NFL 0.5. D1 college football is, whereas high school is, the talent level is so low and the talent pool is so even generally that you could take a guy who plays running back and make him a corner in like a week, he'd be fine, if he puts his mind to it. That's the type of play that you can have in a high school team. And so, yeah, maybe a guy that is a running back in high school ends up a wide receiver at the college level. It happens. I'm coaching on a team where we have a very highly recruited running back, but he is, he's 5'11" and he's fast. He may end up playing as an inside receiver. He doesn't exactly have the width to him, but he's got plenty of room to grow. He's only a junior, but it wouldn't surprise me at all to see him play at the next level at a position like wide receiver because he's the most athletic guy that I've ever seen on a high school football field.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see what he does, and I'm excited to see how this affects the high school game. Um, yeah, but we'll have to see how this progresses. Of course, we're in training camp now, and I do think the Chomp will have a good bounce back year, depending on whether he can stay healthy. Of course, same thing for Derrick Henry. I'll be curious to see between the two which one can stay the most healthy this year, because both are going to have so much put on them considering their situations.
Absolutely, and they are the face of the running back position, so of course they're going to be the ones that get all the attention.
Absolutely, but it's going to be fun to see. But Jason, I think you said you had to hop off, but thanks so much for joining in and talking about what this news means for your team, and we'll have to see what happens with Jonathan Taylor and the Colts.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, and I think he's going to be on the Colts. But, we'll see. But again, thank you guys so much for having me on. As always, I appreciate being a recurring guest on the show. And I appreciate you guys.
Honorary guest.
I appreciate that. I appreciate you guys asking me on to talk a little bit about the situation. But yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it. And it's unfortunate, but it's just reality at the moment. And it's nothing personal against Jonathan Taylor. And I wish him well. I don't think he's done anything to really anger me as a fan. Even if it's just a business decision, I understand. But again, guys, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. And I'll talk to you guys on the next one.
Absolutely, man. As always, Jason Warwick from Indianapolis joining us. Always our honorary third, at this point, practically third co-host at this point. It seems a frequent contributor. So definitely running late into the night here. So I kind of want to do these previews and kind of get them out of the way and maybe finish on that, because we can kind of wrap the other big topic of the NFL this week into the NFL preview. We're going to do the AFC North, because the Bengals, they are the back-to-back champions in the AFC North, but we had, unfortunately, Joe Burrow went down with an injury, a non-contact injury. He was rolling out to his left, and he just his leg just kind of popped out of place. It was a calf strain. So fortunately, that means he will be back at some point this season. He might be back before week 1, but you're definitely not going to see him throughout training camp. Not going to see him through the preseason. You may have to start the season without him. And for the Bengals, they have been to the AFC title game the last 2 years. They went to the Super Bowl 2 years ago. They could have been there last year. Frankly, they should have been at least in overtime if there wasn't a stupid penalty in the AFC title game that put KC in field goal range. But how much should the Bengals be worried about the Burrow injury?
I mean, it's not the first time they had to deal with that. Burrow got injured before, but of course, it's concerning. Definitely, it's concerning.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, I think they'll be fine overall, but it could open the door for some of these other teams. I think particularly the Ravens. For the Ravens, you have to be looking at your chops a little bit. And you got your quarterback. You spent $250 million. It was 260 on Lamar Jackson. And I think they got a really good squad over there. Of course, they almost beat the Bengals in the division round last year with Trevor Huntley, the backup. And if they were able to do that with a backup, I think they still have a really good shot to be competitive.
Yeah, let's see what this new Lamar Jackson contract does for Baltimore. I think definitely and now I'm excited to see Lamar Jackson and
OBJ.
with his OBJ, yeah, with OBJ, what this duo can do.
Yeah, and I'm willing to see if their running backs can stay healthy. Can J.K. Dobbins put a full season together? But you got Gus Edwards, you got Melvin Gordon the third on that roster as well. So Rashad Bateman, has always had a ton of potential at receiver. Zay Flowers was their first round pick this season. So I mean, I think that Ravens offense has a ton of potential if they can stay healthy. Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen are going to be the anchors of that defense. I mean, this is a really, really loaded Ravens team that, for the Bengals, if Joe Burrow is out for any length of time, it could be problematic, could be seriously problematic. Another team that on paper that you think could be problematic is, and also shout out to Tessa. So, hi, Nick, very informative episode. Shout out to my friend Tessa.
Oh, thanks
But
for watching.
yeah, thank you for watching Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports. But back on the AFC North, obviously the most controversial player in the NFL, Deshaun Watson. We're going to finally see him in a full season for the first time since, I believe, 2020 at this point. It's been 3 years since we've seen him in a full season. Really didn't wow people when he came back last year. Clearly was very rusty. And obviously, there's a lot of people who are rooting for his downfall, and deservedly so, considering all that he has been accused of, and evidence shows that he probably was involved in back in Houston. But now he's the man. They're paying him $246 million. And for the Browns, they have one playoff win in the last 30 years. Can this team be it? Because I think they have perhaps the best running back in the league right now in Nick Chubb. They have, of course, Amari Cooper at receiver now. They have, and of course you have Myles Garrett on the defensive end. Absolutely got Chubb. You have Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward. I mean, they have a lot of talent on this team.
But the question is, they have to make the playoff because of the outrageous contract that they made with Deshaun Watson. Because if they don't make the playoff, it's absolutely failure.
Oh, it is absolute failure if you don't do anything with him, and especially considering the PR hit you had to take to sign him. I mean, man, because it's already a bad look to spend that much money on a guy with all these allegations. But if you don't do anything with him, that's just the icing on the cake, or an icing on a really, really bad cake that you don't want to eat. And for Cleveland, that's been the norm, right? Like, it's just been one failure after another for years and years and years. And, pushing out a fan favorite in Baker Mayfield for Deshaun Watson rubbed so many people the wrong way that even if Cleveland does go on to have a really good season, there's some fans that you're just never getting back because of the move he made with Deshaun Watson. So we'll just have to see what he does this season. And then Pittsburgh, the Steelers, the consistent team. And, it was kind of an ongoing, joke with us last year that, can they retain their winning record? And they did. They finished 9-8. And Mike Tomlin, no matter what he's given, seems to put on winning teams. And it does feel like that the Steelers are back in a position where if they can remain healthy, they have the pieces to maybe make a playoff run. I think like the AFC East, the AFC North could be another division where you see 2-3 playoff teams. Of course, Kenny Pickett. If Kenny Pickett truly is the guy, then he's got a lot of good playmakers around him. And you obviously got, I think, George Pickens. I loved that pick last year when they made it, and I think he really blossomed. Allen Robinson they brought in as a receiver. You have, of course, Najee Harris, a massive workhorse in the backfield. Some critics will say that Najee Harris is not the most efficient running back, but I will counter that he had to take a lot of the load in Ben Roethlisberger's last season. Lots of checkdowns. Didn't really have much of a chance to succeed on a high level, but I think he did what he could with the talent around him.
But I think for Tomlin, the big question is, can he succeed in this conference that's been hyper offensive with three, I say, high caliber quarterback? Even Deshaun Watson, prove in the NFL he can be a high caliber quarterback, and going with an unproven quarterback.
And then that's the problem here. I think honestly, if this is the AFC South, I would pick them to win. But it isn't the AFC South. They're in a much tougher division, and they're really going to have to prove it. But I think they might have the defense. And I think you're going to see a lot of defensive battles in this division like you have seen before. So with that, we're going to go through the best quarterback, best coach, best offensive, defensive player, and who we have winning division. So who is the best quarterback in the AFC North?
By far, Joe Burrow.
I would agree. I think it's actually a lot closer than you would think between him and Lamar. I think when Lamar is really healthy, because Lamar has the MVP.
But who is better in the postseason?
Yeah, okay. Burrow has had better postseason play. Yes. So I guess that's a big knock on him, but we'll see what contract Burrow gets versus Lamar at. And obviously, both teams play way different styles of offense as well. So it certainly is. It's a tight one. I'll give the edge to Burrow, though, over Lamar, but slightly. Coach, the best coach. I'm still going to roll with Tomlin. The Steelers had no business being a winning team last year.
Oh, Zach Taylor.
I mean, he's definitely, ever since they picked Jamar Chase, they really have taken off. But Mike Tomlin's had a proven track record of putting the competitive teams out in the field, and even like in retrospect, being able to manage the egos of Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell in the same locker room and Ben Roethlisberger. I mean, that's a guy you want. And now I think he has a much more likable team inside the Pittsburgh locker room. So I think that will pay dividends for team culture and make things a lot less toxic. Best defensive player. Who is the best defensive player in the AFC North?
You go ahead, start.
All right. Well, I'm going to take Myles Garrett. I mean, he has been the linchpin of the Cleveland defense for years now. Perhaps one of the best, if not the best, pass rusher in the league. And, it's crazy to take a pass rusher number one overall, like the Browns did in 2016. But I mean, he's been worth it for Cleveland. But there's a lot of great ones. There's a lot of top tier defensive players in this division.
I'm gonna go with Micah Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, that's because that'd be my second choice. I think the best secondary player. Also, I think Patrick Queen would also deserve to be like third in that from the Ravens. Of course, you have Roquan Smith in there as well. All those elite defensive players. Now, offensive, of course, this is non-quarterback. Best offensive player.
Nick Chubb.
I'll agree with that. Yes, Nick Chubb. I mean, right now, definitely had the best season for a running back. It's really close between him and Jamar Chase because what Jamar Chase has done as a wide receiver has just been unbelievable. And it's really, to me, been the key of that Bengals turnaround, that connection he has with Burrow. But I will go Chubb. All right. And team, who is winning the division?
I think, Cincinnati wins the division, but Cleveland gets the wild card spot.
Ooh. I'm actually going to go in a bit of a different direction. I think the Ravens are winning the division, and the Bengals get a wild card.
Ooh.
So that might be a hot take. And Cleveland and Pittsburgh will be right on the edge. I think all four of them will have a chance, but there is a chance to kind of beat each other up and kind of start canceling each other out. So yeah, I think it's going to be an entertaining division, to say. Between this AFC North, AFC East, it's going to be absolutely insane. But moving over to another preview. This time on the college side of things, the ACC, and this won't be as long. I think it's the SEC or Big Ten because the ACC has not been as interesting because it's really been the conference of Clemson, right? But I think Florida State is really challenging them now. They're a top 10 preseason team. A lot of people think they are going to take out Clemson this year. Do you think that, especially with Dabo's reluctance to use the transfer portal, and, we saw what happened towards the end of last year. They get blown out at Notre Dame. They lose at home to South Carolina. They get owned by Joe Milton in Tennessee. To me, I think for Clemson, I'm kind of nervous if I'm a Clemson fan right now.
Yeah, Clemson's on the downhill. As you said, Dabo is not adapting to this new transfer portal era. I think the quarterback issue uh, uh, since oh my god, uh,
Trevor Lawrence.
yeah, since
Yeah.
Trevor Lawrence left has been a big question. Ukulele did not work. They're gonna have to find a new one.
Right. So it's going to be Cade Klubnik should be the guy this year, because he started the Orange Bowl and I thought he played pretty well. They just didn't finish inside the red zone because remember Clemson was in Vols territory 10 times in that game and couldn't score at all. Like it was the weirdest thing ever because it felt like they had the ball the entire game and just couldn't do anything with it. And you can't do that against teams like Florida State and expect to win. Of course, they have to also go to South Carolina this year. They start off the year at Duke, and Duke had a really good season last year. So watch out for the Blue Devils. If you're Clemson, you can't go into that game just expecting to win. Of course, Florida State, they have a rematch with LSU. They won that game last year in an absolute classic. LSU scores in the last play, but Florida State blocks the extra point, and FSU wins in New Orleans. Now LSU comes to Orlando, which, by the way, I must just say, two neutral site back-to-back games there are just stupid. It should be in Tallahassee and Baton Rouge, not New Orleans and Orlando. But I digress. Regardless of that result, I think Florida State is going to be the best team in the ACC. They got the most returning talent. They have elite talent. I think Jordan Travis is going to be one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the country this year. I'm very high on FSU.
The last time FSU was relevant, I think, was 2017, where I remember, were ranked preseason number 2 in the country, and they had a matchup with Alabama, and then the quarterback got injured, and then they fell apart, and then since then they never recovered.
Right, DeAndre Francois was who the quarterback was. Guys to watch include Jared Verse on the defense. Jared Verse is an absolute monster. Could be one of the best defensive players in the entire country for FSU. I put in Notre Dame in here because they technically aren't ACC, but they play 5 ACC teams per year. Of course, obviously they're not on the conference. But they did get probably the best quarterback from the ACC last year in Sam Hartman from Wake Forest. He's now their quarterback, which is an absolute upgrade for Notre Dame. They have a new OC. And, for Marcus Freeman, I think, this is a huge year for him. Obviously, last year they got to an awful start losing to Marshall and Stanford, but they really had a nice turnaround towards the end of the year. Wins over Clemson, South Carolina, really put them in a good spot in the season. And recruiting is going really well right now for Marcus Freeman. For Notre Dame, I think, playoffs, it's not playoffs or bust this year for Notre Dame. I think that would be ridiculous. But you're putting yourself in a position to where in the 12-team playoff, you can be in a playoff or bust mentality.
Yeah, because Notre Dame, still controls their own schedule because they're independent, even though basically they are kind of like a ACC honorary team, because when they were forced to be on a conference, they went asking the ACC to help them, because without the ACC, they would have been screwed in 2020. They would have basically been out of college football in 2020 if it wasn't for ACC.
Right, and they have a really difficult schedule. They play on the road at NC State, home against Ohio State. They play home against USC. They host Pittsburgh and go to Clemson. Are some of their tougher games this year. So that is a murderer's row schedule for Notre Dame. But I think with Sam Hartman, they can win a lot of those games, and I think maybe they can get to like 10-2, which I don't think will be enough to make the playoffs. But I think 11-1 with that schedule would be good enough to make the playoffs. So, they don't. It's not a year where they have to go undefeated. I think they can afford a loss and be fine. Back to true ACC. A team that I'm really going to be keeping my eye on is the Miami Hurricanes. Of course, last year was just an epic failure for Mario Cristobal in that first year. Multi-score losses to MTSU and Duke, amongst others. I mean, they were just terrible. Their offense, especially under Josh Gaddis, was awful. What does Miami need to do this year to be successful? What record would be a success for Miami?
At least 8-4.
I'd agree with that. I think you got to get positive momentum rolling, because if you can't go 8-4 this year, then you really look stupid for poaching away Mario Cristobal from Eugene. And I've listened to him talk to like Josh Pate, and he sounds very energetic. He sounds like, yes, we are here. We are in South Florida. We're going to take back South Florida. But talking is one thing. I gotta see you do it. And for them, I think the critical game is week 2 against Texas A&M. They need to beat A&M at home in Miami, at least at what can be called a home, 40 miles away from their campus. So we'll see what they can pull off there. Any other teams you're interested in? For me, obviously, you got UNC, Sam Howell, or not Sam Howell. Drake May. Of course, Drake May is going to be a Heisman contender this year. He could have been invited to New York last year. They open up week 1 against South Carolina, and what's the college game day game, and that's been announced in Charlotte. So that'll be a very intriguing week 1 matchup between Drake May and Spencer Rattler and UNC and USC. For me, also, just outside of UNC, NC State, they were highly touted last year, but they really disappointed. They lost Devin Leary. And for me, just kind of personally, obviously, the Vols are going to play UVA, and they had a tragedy in the last year. How do they respond to that this year? And Virginia Tech maybe had their worst team ever last year. I mean, getting blown out on the road by Old Dominion. I mean, they had no offense. And coupled with that, they had to watch Hendon Hooker be a Heisman contender at Tennessee. So, I mean, I just couldn't imagine how painful it was to be a Hokies fan last year. Considering everything.
A team I'm curious to see is the Pittsburgh Panthers, because they finished the season with they won their last 5 games last season, and I mean, of course they started really bad. They lost overtime with Tennessee, definitely kind of derailed their beginning of the season, but they won against Syracuse, they were ranked. They won against Miami in a double-digit win. I'm curious to see Pittsburgh.
Right, but it feels like they've lost a lot of their talent. They lost Israel Abaconda, who I thought was their best player last year. They've lost, I think, most of their talent from their ACC championship winning team 2 years ago. So it's going to be really difficult. And plus, they have to go to West Virginia this year, and that is going to be an electric game in Morgantown. West Virginia, I don't think it's going to be very good, but I think they have a really good chance of taking out the Pittsburgh Panthers there.
They won revenge for that 2007 loss.
Absolutely, and the revenge for last year as well, because that was a very tight game in Pittsburgh that West Virginia could have won, but were unable to do so as well. And Neil Brown, he is on the hottest of hot seats. He needs that win, because they're not getting one week 1 at Penn State at night. I'll just tell you that right now for West Virginia. Who do we think the worst team in the ACC is going to be?
As painful as it is, I think the Virginia Cavaliers.
Yeah, I think that's the safe pick. I mean, they're not projected to win many games this season, and obviously they're going to have a very tough test in week 1 at high noon in Nashville against a team that runs up and down the field. And just throughout the rest of the season, there's just so much they have to rebuild. I think Georgia Tech definitely is way ahead of them. Syracuse is way ahead of them. Boston College is way ahead of them. It's going to be a rough one, I think, for UVA. And we'll see if the state of Virginia can recover anytime soon in college football. Because right now, between UVA and Virginia Tech, it's not good. But who do we think is going to go to the title game? And this year, there are no divisions. So any two teams can make it, which means the obvious pick, and I'm going to go, and I feel like I've been kind of contrarian so far, but I will go with the obvious pick. Clemson, Florida State, FSU wins.
Yeah. Clemson, Florida State's win.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we're getting here close to the end here. I do want to ask you just one thing. I know you're a Mets fan. That Max Scherzer trade, just kind of what is your thoughts on that? And, they're traded to the Rangers and the Mets, they just seem to be on full-on tank mode.
They got, I think, from that trade, the brother of Ronald Acuna.
I believe so. Yeah, so maybe he can help turn things around. But, man, this
he's
this
a
year's about as – yeah. That's all you can really do at this point is build for the future.
Yeah, really, with this trade, it shows this season the Mets gave up. The Mets gave up. They are 17.5 points behind the Atlanta Braves, which looks like dominating the division. And in terms of wild card, they're also 6 games behind, which is not that bad, but the competition is huge. Yeah, so they're already, Steve Cohen is still, he's not thinking about the long-term future. He's thinking about the mid-term future, the mid-run future. He wants results. Probably he knows he's not going to get this year, probably next year, maybe, but he wants results at least by 2025.
Well, that's ambitious. At some point, you got to realize that trying to buy the future isn't going to work, and you got to actually build it. And we'll see if he learns how to do that, because it just doesn't look like he's going to. But yeah, I guess we can leave it at that for this episode 88 of Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports, the only sports podcast that talks about American and Brazilian sports. Of course, we'll continue our football previews next week. On tap, we got the Big 12 and the AFC West. So we're going out west to talk some more football next week. Of course, we'll have more on World's Cup and the latest in both American and Brazilian sports. But for Gustavo Tomazeli down in Americana, Sao Paulo, Brazil, I'm Nick Hill in Chattanooga, Tennessee, United States. And you've been listening to episode 88, recorded on July 31st, 2023, of Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports. You'll have a good one.